What design change can people make that consistently has the highest ROI? Everybody's limited on time. What can we do? What is those low hanging fruits that's going to have a big impact on our listings?
In the last 2 years have really tried to double down on capturing as much data as we can. In part, we're collecting this data because we're able to do split tests with our clients, which is awesome through manager experiments, through pick through other methods. But we're always validating on Amazon itself. What we've noticed for over the last year is where you're going to see the highest ROI and the lightest lift is definitely going to be in split testing your title. So to be clear, the ROI that we're seeing for title is up to 589% increase in sales by title testing. The next lightest lift after the title is going to be the main image, but that one doesn't show an increase in sales. Where you're going to get bigger boost there is in your CTR.
Yep.
But we're still tracking sales because that's the measure that we like to track. At the end of the day, what we all care about. So with main images, the ROI, what we potentially see is up to 160% is the highest we've seen. For your A+ content, that's going to be the heaviest lift, especially now with premium. But one single SKU, we've seen up to 1,008% increase in sales. And that's the best we've seen to date. Now, doing all of these things together is where you're going to get the trifecta effect because they all build upon each other, right? So I think the highest we've seen to date when you do all these things together is about 2,500% increase in sales.
Hey, everybody, welcome to E-commerce Mavericks. I've got Daniela here with me. She's from Mindful Goods. She's got almost a decade of experience optimizing Amazon listings and building beautiful, high converting Amazon pages. If you follow her on LinkedIn, you'll see the results that she's been able to deliver for her clients, and it's super impressive. I'm really excited to have her on and to dive into sort of how she makes these beautiful pages and what makes them tick. So welcome, Daniela.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to share all of the tips with you.
Good. I'm going to steal all of your knowledge, and hopefully we can all use that to build better Amazon listings.
Love it.
So I'm going to kick it off with a question that I actually get a lot is what design change can people make that consistently has the highest ROI? Everybody's limited on time. What can we do? What is those low-hanging fruits that's going to have a big impact on our listings?
We get this question a ton as well.
Yeah.
And so we, in the last 2 years, have really tried to double down on capturing as much data as we can. And in part, we're collecting this data because we're able to do split tests with our clients, which is awesome, through manager experiments, through pick through other methods, right? But we're always validating on Amazon itself. And so what we've noticed for over the last year is where you're going to see the highest ROI and the lightest lift is definitely going to be in split testing your title. Yeah. The second lightest lift, not as big. So to be clear, the ROI that we're seeing for title is up to 589% increase in sales by title testing, which is insane, right? For the next lightest lift after the title is going to be the main image, but that one doesn't show doesn't show an increase in sales. Where you're going to get bigger boost there is in your CTR. So, but we're still tracking sales because that's the measure that we like to track. That's at the end of the day, what we all care about. So with main images, the ROI you can potentially see, or what we potentially see is up to 160% is the highest we've seen. And then for your A+ content, that's going to be the heaviest lift, especially now with premium. But one single SKU, we've seen up to 1,008% increase in sales. So, and that's the best we've seen to date. Now, doing all of these things together is where you're going to get the trifecta effect because they all build upon each other, right? So I think the highest we've seen to date when you do all these things together is about 2,500% increase in sales.
That's a significant impact. I think people underestimate how much impact you can have from content. And it's helpful to hear the actual hard numbers of this is the impact it has. We did this and here's what the numbers say.
Here's the disclaimer on that though, because the type of client that we serve is not the masses of what's on Amazon, right? So when Amazon puts out numbers, it's a very conservative number because they're including every type of brand, right? They're including resellers, big CPG brands. They're including, commodity type products, private label sellers, all of that. The bulk of who we support is the D2C style brand that understands the value of content, right? So we're able to get these really high quality lifestyle imagery and build them into infographics and create these landing page effects that you would typically see on like a Shopify website. So this strategy works for brands that are brand minded, for products that are building into brands, but it may not necessarily work for something generic like a garlic press or whatever, right? Like you obviously want to have elevated content still, but the style of content that you would do doesn't necessarily have to be what we do, right? If you go look at our website, it's a different kind of vibe.
Completely. And what you're saying here is essentially, look, if you're selling a Me Too product, yeah, you might get some lift from optimizing your listings, but you're not going to see these types of lifts unless you're selling, uh, building a product that's unique, or you're actually building a brand versus just another Me Too product.
Exactly.
You mentioned at the very beginning title having the biggest sort of ROI and impact. That one surprised me. I thought it would have been main image and the images. Tell me a little bit more about titles and what changes you're seeing that drive that impact. The biggest question I always get is like, well, should I have my brand in the title, and where should I put this keyword, et cetera? So tell me more about that.
So it's interesting, right? I think this can go in tandem with your PPC strategy as well. But the way that we look at it when we're building titles is, if you've ever heard, I mean, Brandon Young has a really good feature in Data Dive that we were doing like years before they came out with it, but it's literally exactly what we do. It's called Battle of the Titles. And it's such a great name for what it is, right? And so when we build a listing title, what we're doing is we're trying to understand what are the main keywords, that might be converting well on PPC. What are the main keywords that maybe we haven't considered adding to the title? And how do we kind of zhuzh up the title without keyword stuffing, but be smart about what goes in the front of the title, not building out a super long title, but really thinking through what could be the best title that is still describing the product really well so that people can read it. It's not confusing, but also plays that balance of including those keywords that are going to get as much reach as possible. So what we do when we're building it is we write the title the way we normally would. Then we take a version 2 and a version 3. Version 2, we kind of look through the keywords and see what we want to place in there. Version 3, we do the same thing. Then with each of the keywords that we're adding to the title, we're trying to identify what is the relevant search traffic that we can possibly reach, right? What are these tools like Data Dive telling us that we can possibly reach? And ultimately, we're trying to get as much reach as possible with that title, right? So that's our focus. And so for us, we try to come up with 2 titles that are really high in reach. And so we'll split test those. And here's the thing with split testing though, even though one title might win or might lose, you shouldn't stop there at your first win. You can keep going and test the next thing. The other thing you can do is you can periodically, maybe even every 2 months or every quarter, as your PPC strategy changes or as you collect data from your PPC, you can then start moving in other keywords. Like you might decide as a team that you want to strategically go after a specific subset of smaller keywords. Well, then a great place to bump that up would be in your title, but you wouldn't want to lose your main root keywords within that, right?
I think the battle of the titles is a great descriptor here. Like you said, you have limited space. You want to maximize your revenue and maximize the traffic you can pull into your listing with these, with X amount of keywords. And so the question becomes then, well, what is truly the best? And it really forces you to focus on what keywords you want to target and own, and what keywords that would be nice to have, but are not mission critical to driving that growth.
It's a balance. It's a balance. And it's definitely worth testing and aligning with your PPC strategy.
Yes. I mean, you could have the best title in the world, but if your PPC strategy is driving bad traffic to that title, let's do an example. Like you just did a case study on dumplings. If PPC is driving traffic that's looking for a chopstick, and your title is dumpling, you're going to be wasting a ton of PPC spend, et cetera. PPC and your titles, SEO, images, all that has to work together and be telling the same story to really maximize revenue and profit versus just throwing any traffic you can at it.
Exactly.
How do you feel, given that your agency is dialed into optimization and content and building these listings? How do you work with companies that have a separate PPC agency? Do you provide them a keyword list and say, "Hey, look, tell your PPC agency this is our master keyword list"? So how do you integrate that so that your end user, your customer, can get the biggest impact and benefit from your services?
Yeah, that's such a good question. About 50% of the brands that we work with right now are already working with a PPC agency, maybe even more. And so when we ask the client to go through the intake form and submit to us all the things that we need, some of the things we ask for are things that they get from their PPC agency or that they pull from their Amazon account themselves. So things like brand analytics, search query performance, PPC reports, and what we're trying to do there is really understand as much of the data as possible. Like, what do we have already that we can analyze and use if necessary? And then we use third-party tools like Helium 10 or Data Dive or Jungle Scout to pull in some additional data, merge everything together, and then explain to the client in a Loom video exactly why we're building the listing in this structure. So that Loom video and that explanation can then go back to the agency as well, right? So they understand what we're trying to do here. And if they at some point need to change it or they disagree with the strategy, that's an easy change because they understand the structure that went into it. They understand where the data came from. Everything's linked in there with the spreadsheets and everything. So we try to be as transparent as possible in that. So we're not just going off and building something or writing something and then just being like, here you go. Like, good luck,
Yeah. Yeah, you take that extra step to integrate with their existing strategy. Yeah, that definitely adds an additional value to the service you're providing. Jumping back to the ROI impacts from design, you'd mentioned, A plus being a big lift. A plus premium, while it's been around for a little while, I think it's still new to a lot of people. Are you finding I spoke with a big seller the other day, and they're like, you know what, A plus premium has been a dud for us. It hasn't really impacted or been much better than traditional A plus. What's your take on A plus premium? What are you seeing?
We're seeing up to 600% lifts in sales from going from basic to premium. And that's
Ah,
something we've been tracking, basic to premium, because that is another top question that we get asked a lot. Like, is the ROI there? Is it worth it? Now, is it worth it for every brand? I don't know. I mean, some of the brands that come to us, they have horrible basic A plus content. So obviously any A plus content we were going to design for them was going to be better than what they already had. So it wouldn't matter if we did basic or premium, but premium gives you the extra benefit of adding video and hotspots and mobile content and carousels. And so it's much more engaging. And so my response to that is like, maybe your content was already good to start, or maybe you're just doing it wrong. maybe your premium A plus content is just like not that great. You didn't think through all the levers that you can possibly use on your premium. For us, when we look at premium, my thought process is thinking through dwell time, right? Because that's at the end of the day, that's one of the biggest benefits of premium is engaging with the shopper a little bit longer, just a couple seconds more can make all the difference in conversion. And so how do we get them to stay longer on our content? One of those ways is with carousels. One of those ways can be with a hotspot. A great way is with video at the top of the A plus content. But overall, like it's the design aesthetic that's really going to stop the scroll. So if you didn't design something that's worthy of a scroll stop, then it's not going to perform for you because people are just going to scroll right past it.
Completely. And stopping the scroll is something that's been a key part of succeeding in social media. And it's not something you hear much when people talk about Amazon optimization. But stopping the scroll is key to getting people to, like you said, increase dwell time on your listing, to actually read through and care about what you have to say. So I think it's so interesting that you're far ahead of, I think, the crowd and already calling it that and thinking about that, because that is just something that nobody really talks about. But it's stopping the scroll is everything on social. You got to hook somebody in that first 2 seconds. And I think people don't think about Amazon that way, but it's very true. In a highly competitive marketplace, which Amazon is now, you have to be able to stop that scroll.
I think another way to look at it is if you imagine companies like Facebook and TikTok, are tracking every single thing we do on those social platforms, right? And they're assigning some sort of metric system to know which influencers are the top content creators, right? Like who creates the best content? How do we know that they do create the best content? They have to measure something. So they're measuring how long people are watching videos, how many times they're watching videos. Are they liking the video? Are they sharing the video? Are they commenting on the video? If you would say, let's say a comment is worth 5 points and a like is maybe worth 1 point. I guarantee you Amazon is doing the same kind of system where they're tracking every single bit of what a shopper does. Like the amount of tests that Amazon does across the US market is insane in terms of understanding what little tiny tweak, what color of a button, what changing of a hotspot, what like all of these features that they're constantly testing without us even knowing, right? So these are the things that we do know we can control within the product page. And I guarantee you Amazon is tracking that and has some sort of system to understand when people are using Premium A plus, when people are increasing their dwell time on their pages, how many times people are watching videos on these pages. Like all of that stuff matters over time.
Oh yeah, I think there's all these hidden metrics that Amazon is measuring, and they're not sharing with us. But they do, like you said, impact. If Amazon's going to surface your listing, at the end of the day, like Amazon's number one goal is not to please the sellers; it's to ensure that the buyers that come to Amazon are able to quickly find exactly what they're looking for and be satisfied with it. That's going to drive revenue for them. And so whatever hidden metrics they can leverage to make that happen, they're going to use regardless of whether or not that's shared with the seller or even benefits the seller or the brand. So speaking of, sort of Amazon hidden metrics and the changes they're making, I think everybody's sort of seen the rollout of Rufus, and Amazon is notorious for rolling things out quickly and in very beta format and then figuring it out as they go.
Yeah.
And Rufus is been very hit or miss for us. In addition, I've also seen, and I think you've probably seen this, where Amazon is highlighting the searched keywords in the title or the listing. So on the search engine results page, somebody searches dumpling, you see that keyword dumpling highlighted in the relevant listings. What do you think about Rufus and AI assisted search, and how has that changed how you write copy and do keyword research?
So I think this is something that we're very much paying attention to, but it's also, if I'm being honest, I feel like right now it's a bit of a shiny object because everyone's talking about it. It's super buzzworthy, but nobody really knows exactly the impact that it's having right now on search. And it's so early, right? And so we do want to pay attention. We do want to start testing. We do want to begin to play with it and understand how it's working. But like, it's interesting to me to spend so much time on something new that we don't know anything about yet versus like getting your fundamentals right, like Premium A plus content, right? Like so many brands, over 50% of brands that come to us right now still don't even have Premium A plus on their listing, which is something that we know vendor sellers are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for. And it's completely free for brands, right? So the interesting thing for me about Rufus is going to be the way that it changes how we search. So when I think about how we've searched in the past, it's always been this like search, find, buy, right? We search for something on Amazon, like we type it into the search box. We see the results in the search results page, and then we click on something and then ultimately buy, right? I think Amazon is exploring that word search, right? So it's less about find and buy, and it can be see, find, buy. So for instance, if I see something I like and I have a photo of it, and I'm using Amazon's new tool to highlight inside of the photo and do a circle. And then Amazon shows me the results of like, here's the closest thing that we have to that photo that you have, right? So that's a different way that we're going to be learning how to search is by see, find, buy. I see this thing. I know exactly what I want. I'm getting it. Like super high intent searches. But then we're also looking at search, find, buy from an exploratory aspect of like, for instance, I used this example the other day. I was looking for an Argentinian mate cup, right? And they're very specifically made in Argentina with a special kind of wood, and it's better for the tea or whatever. So my husband was like, I don't want one that's made in China. I want one from Argentina. So I typed into Rufus, show me the brands that have handmade Argentinian mate cups. And it gave me a list of 5. I clicked into every single one of the listings. They were all made in China. And so the next thing that I did is I went into every single listing and I looked and saw and tried to find, did they put in their subject matter anywhere in their listing of their bullets, of their title, of their description? Did they have anywhere where it said handmade in Argentina? And none of them did, because those ones were made in China. Then I went and I couldn't find any search results for the handmade in China. And this is the problem with search right now, right? The search is like, it's been this kind of way of searching on Amazon forever. And I think so many of us as shoppers were frustrated by not finding the thing that we're looking for. It keeps showing us like the top sellers. And then we click in there and it's not the thing that we were actually looking for. It's the ones made in China or whatever. So what did I have to do in that scenario? I had to go to perplexity.ai. I typed in, what are the top Argentinian brands that make handmade mate cups? It gave me a list of the top 5 brands. I typed in the top 5 brands one by one into Amazon, found them all. They were all being sold on Amazon, but Amazon's Rufus wasn't picking that up. So as I went into every listing, I could see that they had not put into any of their attributes or their bullets or their anywhere that it was handmade in Argentina. So that's on them, right? That like maybe Rufus would have picked it up if it would have been in the back end somewhere in the attributes or in the bullet points or somewhere. But it was inside of one big, huge product image where that was the only thing it said for one of the brands, handmade in Argentina. That was the only text on the image. And so the other thing is, if Rufus would have been able to read the text on the image, it would have been like, okay, this one's handmade in Argentina. So I do think we're at the very early stages of this. I do think Rufus is going to read images in the future. I do think it's going to get better at understanding the exact intricacies of every single product. And that's going to make search so much better for all of us overall. And I think it's going to kind of even the playing field a little bit, right? Because right now, who shows up at the top? It's the people that are pushing the most PPC, getting the most conversions, having the lowest price, may not be the product that we're actually looking for as a shopper, right? And so if we can improve the experience for the shopper, which is what Amazon's all about, and have the most relevant product that I'm actually looking for show up, then the idea should be that we can create more conversions that way, right? And enhance the experience. So I do think that's what's going to be happening. I don't think we're there today. I think right now it's a lot of buzz. And we're like in Chat GPT version 1 of Rufus, you know,
Yes.
like we're like,
Yep.
we're like very baby stages. An interesting thing though, I will share is what Rufus is Vanessa Hung is doing. Have you watched any of her LinkedIn's? This is a fun one. So what she's doing is she's actually looking to see what are the questions that people are asking Rufus on competitor listings, gathering up that data. And then it's kind of like reverse engineering Rufus. And then she's making sure that data is baked into the attributes on the back end for these clients. And then Amazon will eventually basically scan the listing again, right? So it'll feed that info into Rufus. But she's saying there's a lag time on that. Like sometimes it'll happen within a week. Sometimes it'll happen in 3 weeks. So that is a way that you can prepare for Rufus right now, is starting to understand the questions that people are asking. And in the future, I do think Amazon will give us reports as brand owners to tell us, hey, kind of like the search queries, you know, like these are the questions. It's like the Rufus queries. These are the questions people are asking about your product. Please use this to make your listing better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think you've described, honestly, AI in a way, in that you can see and feel the potential. Like you said, if it could read images, and was just a little bit smarter, that all your problems would have been solved in that search. And I think Amazon sees that future as well. Of course they do. And so they, in classic Amazon fashion, they roll out something that's not really good. And then they iterate on it over time with feedback. And like you said, we need to be paying attention to it. But if your A+ is crap, your images haven't been tested, your title doesn't include your big keywords, you've got a lot of low-hanging fruit to work on before turning around and thinking about how can I optimize for this next gen Rufus thing.
Right, exactly. And I will say Amazon can read your images. Like we know this is a capability. That data right now is not being shared with Rufus. I think it will in the future. It's just not yet in there. So these are things that you can start preparing for, but it's something that also you should have your fundamentals there, like you said, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy how many clients we bring on board that really don't have the fundamentals. I mean, it's good. That's why they hire us, right? And why we're able to drive the results for them. But like you said, there's a lot of low hanging fruit. Go get that, the high ROI stuff, and then come back
Yeah.
and look at optimizing your back end keywords for Rufus and your images for Rufus. But though all this, you pointed out, and very smartly, images are read by Amazon. So that does impact search results, or can impact search results, put it that way. Daniela, this has been so informative and super helpful. I really love everything that you shared with us. I think everybody's going to get a lot of value out of this. How can they work with you? How can they find out more? Where should they follow you? How do we get more Daniela in our lives?
Yeah, more Daniela in your lives would probably be LinkedIn is number one. That's where I'm at every day. But if you want to check out samples of our work or case studies, you can go to mindfulgoods.co. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of our homepage, we have something called a mini audit, where if you want myself or one of our creative directors to look at your listing and give you a Loom video of all the tips and tricks that we think you should do to your listing, there's no strings attached. You can purchase one of those and send it to your designer, or you can hire us to do the work for you.
That's a really high value add. I think people should take advantage of that. Getting Daniela and all of her experience looking at your listing and giving you some play by plays and areas to improve is super valuable. So I think everybody should take advantage of that. Daniela at mindfulgoods.co. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.